Welcome into Palmetto Sports Daily. We've got another week ahead of us. It is Monday. Lots of exciting action over the weekend, and we'll kick things off with South Carolina bouncing back from that loss at Mizzou and getting a big win over Kentucky. I mean, guys, when you think about, all of the talk that goes into a game like Kentucky, when you're saying, hey, we really need to see this team perform in XYZ areas, they need to bounce back, they need to do all these things. South Carolina did that. I mean, they really played complementary football in a way that we haven't seen them do so far this season, and it was really nice to watch. I mean, complete game. Saw a lot more from Lenore Sellers. The defense looked really great. Obviously, we'll get to that in a second with all of the defensive scoring that we saw. Special teams looked pretty good as well. So, I mean, this is the type of game that you really want to see from this team coming off of, a 2-2 start and having a lot of questions ahead. Of course, on the other side of the bye week, you've got 5 ranked teams waiting for you. So this was kind of a do or die moment for South Carolina. So they get that big 35-13 win. We'll jump to some sound real quick from Gerald Kilgore, just talking about what went right for the Gamecocks in this game against Kentucky.
We fully locked in today, and that's just going to continue. This is a win that we needed as a team because, like I said, it's never been about the talent. It's never been about the ability. It's just about coming together and putting on display like we did tonight, offense, defense, and on special teams. So past couple weeks, couple bumps, couple bruises, had to focus on tackling, and I feel like we did that tonight. We did everything that we said that we already knew we could do. So that's the whole thing, just continue to keep being ourselves. We might not have fully displayed that in the first 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks, but we perfectly fine, and like I said, just look out ahead.
So, guys, I just kind of want to ask the question. I mean, this is what we needed to see from the Gamecocks. Just what were some of your takeaways moving into the bye week, and then now they'll have to go and face LSU on the road in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I can go, Julia. I think this defense was the most reminiscent of last year's defense that we've seen from this South Carolina team all season. So it was definitely refreshing to see them turn 2 big turnovers into a touchdown. That's what I was most pleased with for the Gamecocks. Yes, Lenore Sellers also had a great day. Took maybe a few too many sacks still. I know we're being nitpicky in this situation, but it was good to see the Gamecocks get back in the right column, and now they head into a bye week, I think, with some good momentum. It almost is kind of like, would you almost rather see them just keep going now that they have some momentum? Because now you're like, I hope the bye week doesn't stall out some of that intensity because, well, in 2 weeks they do have to go to LSU. It was just announced it's going to be a night game. But nonetheless, it's nice to see them get that momentum going, especially to win at home in a night game under the lights at Williams-Brice. Ladies, what did y'all see?
Yeah, I mean, a bye week is such a double-edged sword.
No, go ahead. You got it, girl.
You can go ahead. Okay.
I was gonna say.
We're so nice. The bye week is such a double-edged sword. Guys, there's a delay on this show in case you can't tell. So whenever one of us goes to talk and somebody else goes to talk, we can't tell.
We're just
Anyways, a bye week is
about
such
the Gamecocks win, right?
We are. I know, we're ready to hop on it. A bye week, though, such a double-edged sword because, like you said, Summer, if you want to keep that momentum going, like it kind of interrupts that in a way. But at the same time, I think South Carolina really does need some rest time. They've got a good amount of injuries, that they've got to recover from, especially on the O-line. So I think it'll be good that they'll get the rest this week. I think it also gives the offense a chance to step up. We saw the defense step up a bit this week. We saw way better tackling. We saw those defensive scores. But, I mean, looking at some of these stats in the offense, their rushing offense is dead last in the conference. They're second to last in scoring offense, 13 in passing offense, and last in total offense. So, there are a couple of positives to take out of this game. But at the same time, I really do hope during this bye week that they're still trying to figure out these issues and to work on them.
Well, and I also know that going and playing LSU on the road is not a task to be taken lightly, right? Especially when you feel like you've got a little bit of momentum like what we all watched on Saturday night. But it is worth noting that in LSU's game against Ole Miss, if it's any consolation for the Gamecocks, there were a little bit of weaknesses in that game. Nussmeier looked a little bit flustered, and I know the Tigers were without their starting running back in that game, but they had a hard time running the ball. And so there's some weaknesses in that LSU offense, I think, that if the Gamecocks prepare the way that they talk about preparing, right, every single week, they might be able to exploit some of those weaknesses. Playing on the road, very different than that environment that they played in on Saturday night, and had that momentum riding the crowd a little bit, writing some really good things with the defense. But if the defense can come out and have in a performance like it did in that second quarter against Kentucky, I mean, my goodness, I just have to go back and talk about that second quarter for a second. I just want to make sure I get this right in order. That fumble return for a touchdown, then a pick six back-to-back, turnover on downs, an interception, and a fumble. I mean, just a crazy performance. You guys all talked about the 2 touchdowns, but they can come out and do that, kind of ride that a little bit, take that momentum through the bye week and have it roll over with them going to LSU. I think they might be able to match up pretty well with the Tigers offense, but of course we'll have to wait and see 2 weeks from now.
And of course, talking about the defense a little bit more, some accolades for Brian Thomas Jr. He gets SEC Co-Defensive Lineman of the Week, 7 total tackles, 5 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. So good to see that growth on the defense. But Teagan, to your point as well, with all of those, statistical categories on the offensive side of the ball, you really want to see that measurable growth at this point in the season. And I was glad to see that they did grow from Missouri to Kentucky. I mean, they had -9 rushing yards against the Tigers, and then to come back here and they had 178 on the ground this time around, 341 total yards, so a big step forward in that regard. They gave up less than 250 yards to Kentucky. So, and another thing too, 5 penalties for 65 yards. That's a stark contrast from the 14 for 98 yards that they had against Missouri. So it's nice to see them taking a step forward in all of these areas and getting ready for that gauntlet of a schedule that they have on the other side of the bye week. Another thing to hit on as well, obviously early on in the game when Kentucky scored its first touchdown, Seth McGowan, the running back, he threw his football that he scored with into the stands. It hit a fan. We come to find out later on that was Lenora Sellers' grandfather, and he talked about it post-game where, he got attended to, and Lenoris went over and gave him a game ball and all of this stuff, and he said he's okay, all these things. Seth McGowan came out and apologized for doing this, saying that's not something he should be doing, kind of got caught up in the moment. That's not what he was aiming to do. But just want to kind of get your guys' opinion on this situation of, there wasn't a flag for this, anything like that. What did you think of how all this went down?
Yeah, I don't think, obviously, Seth McGowan was intentional. I don't think he planned to hit a fan. I do think it was heat of the moment celebration. He spikes the ball kind of sideways. But yeah, I do think kind of like, come on, should be some ramifications for hitting a fan or throwing the ball outside of the field in general. You would think that would be some kind of rule, but I'm not caught up on that. But I did see his apology. Seth McGowan released one on social media after. So it seemed like he genuinely did feel really bad about it. But the Gamecock football social media account did release a really funny video. It was Jaden Sellers on the sidelines. You see McGowan spike the ball out there, and his face was like, and then Lenoris addressed it after, right? And was like, yeah, I saw that on the Jumbotron. It was like, wait, that's my granddad. And it was so wholesome because he was like, wait, not my sweet grandpa right there getting hit by it. Obviously not intentional, but maybe that kind of lit a fire for him. I mean, I think about me, if that were me, I'd be like, wait a minute. But it also for me, it really humanized these players because we put them on this pedestal, and then it's like, it makes you realize it's just a glorified high school game still for them. They're like, my grandpa's down there watching, and then wait, what happened to him? They're thinking and seeing this stuff normally too, which I thought was actually really wholesome to see. Maybe that's just me overanalyzing this, but I thought it was really cute. I'm glad Lenoris gave him his game ball. I'm glad the grandpa is okay, and I'm glad he's able to come to these games and sit right there. I'm sure that's cool for him. But yeah, I think McGowan's apology was sincere. But yeah, Teagan, what are you thinking? Do you think there's any penalty for that? Should there be?
Listen, I mean, it was bad enough that McGowan hit a fan, let alone it had to be Lenoris' grandfather. Come on, what are the odds? This guy already was stressed out over it hitting them, and then it had to be, a grandpa. But, I think there totally should be some sort of ramification or penalty for this. We see people get unsportsmanlike conduct for different celebrations in the end zone and everything. There's a whole new layer when the actual football, hits a fan, even if there aren't any injuries involved. That's never something you want to happen. I get that you want to celebrate scoring. Great, cool, do your thing. But it has to be on a certain level. What do you think, Caroline?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think an unsportsmanlike conduct flag would have been appropriate there. I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe the refs weren't paying attention to it at the time, but if it was up on the Jumbotron, just about everybody in the stadium would have seen it. So, obviously I'm not a referee in college football, but to me that seems like something, okay, maybe a little excessive celebration there. But I do think the way that Seth handled it and the way that Lenoris handled it after saying, my granddad's okay, and not being upset about it, kind of when he was talking about it post-game, I thought that was pretty cool. It's like everyone knows that wasn't the intention for him to hit somebody. So kind of a cool way for them to handle it there. But guys, we are going to take a quick break here. We've got more college football content coming your way in just a few minutes.
Welcome back here to Palmetto Sports Daily. We just talked about the Gamecocks win, a win that was probably more surprising than that one this past weekend down here in the Lowcountry. Charleston Southern broke their 14-game losing streak, the longest streak in the country, with a 31-24 win over South Carolina State. Now, this was a rivalry renewed. SC State came down here to Charleston. It was their first meeting since 1999, and the Charleston Southern Buccaneers, like I said, picking up that upset win. They did have a sellout crowd out there at Buccaneer Field. It was a great atmosphere for some FCS college football out there. But yes, Charleston Southern finally picking up that first win. You could tell the excitement from the players after the game. I think a lot of people were pretty shocked. SC State, rightfully so, shocked. But for Charleston Southern, they went up 14-0 in the first quarter, and then SC State battled back, tied it at 14-14 for halftime. But Charleston Southern defense proving to play the difference maker in this one. They turned 2 turnovers into touchdowns for some big-time plays for them and battled through the end there. They needed this win, but SC State obviously dealing with some penalties in this one, looking to bounce back. Julia Westerman, you caught up with SC State head coach Chinnis Berry today. What did he have to say about that game?
Yeah, I went down to Orangeburg this morning, and I mean, he was talking about how before kickoff even, he felt like his team felt a little bit flat. He was asking the coaches, he's like, are they focused or are they flat? And they very much seemed very flat coming out of the gate there, going down 14-0. Just didn't seem like they were playing their brand of football, and that's kind of what I felt like was conveyed to us with Coach this morning. And biggest things to look at with this, I mean, SC State had 100-plus more yards than Charleston Southern. They had more first downs, but the most glaring issues here, 12 penalties for 110 yards and 3 turnovers. That's not going to win you a football game, especially on the road with against a team that really, really wanted to win. So I talked to Coach about those penalties, asked him, how do you address those going into this week? How do you kind of re-channel that, aggression and the discipline that you need to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
The thing about it, the penalties, and I just got on our coaches about it, it's the discipline. Because at the end of the day, 8 of the penalties out of the 12 were pre-snap before the ball even snapped. You know what I'm saying? So that can't happen. A couple of them were post-snap. Now, a couple of them were very questionable, and I'm going to send a couple calls in that I did not like when I watched it on film. I'm going to send a couple calls in to the Big South or to that conference just to be able to ask those officials kind of what they saw right there. But all in all, I think our young men, they played, they were focused, they were locked in for the most part, but we lost the football game, and at the end of the day, we got to learn from it.
Turning around to homecoming this week, the Bulldogs host Savannah State, and not the only big win in the Lowcountry this weekend, Summer.
Yeah, for sure. So the Lowcountry on a little bit of a tear this weekend. But the Citadel, they've actually played better on the road this season. They've yet to score at home, but this past weekend they were at Chattanooga and they picked up another win in pretty dominant fashion. They beat Chattanooga 28-10. And after the first quarter of this game, or in the first quarter, the Citadel starting quarterback Kobe Tompkins left the game with an injury. No problem. Quentin Hayes came in for the Bulldogs and went on to rack up 103 rushing yards on the ground and a pair of touchdowns. So, it was kind of the next man up mentality. He came in, and the Citadel just cruising through this one. So like I said, they've yet to score points at home, but y'all, this season on the road, they are, I believe, 81-46 in outscoring their opponents, and they're 2-1 on the road, and they're also 2-1 now in SoCon play. So they might want to adjust their schedule and just keep this thing rolling, stay away all season, because apparently that works for them. I know that's not normally the case, but their head coach Maurice Drayton said they did something a little different this past week at practice. He said he wanted it to be a rebrand rebirth for this team. He said they wanted to kind of set the tone, restart, and here's what he said they did last week.
So what we did on Sunday, we didn't practice. What I did, I took them to the swimming pool, and we had a baptism, so to speak. We put them all in the water. We went under the water, and when they came back up, I told them they were new, right? And they bought into it, they felt it, they understood it. And then Tuesday, Wednesday was very, very challenging practices. Thursday was a polished day, and this was a business trip all the way, Friday and Saturday.
All right, I guess they went down with the old, up with the new. Whatever was in that water, it worked for them. So I guess we'll see how that fares for them in 2 weeks. They're on a bye week this week, so might be double baptized this week. Another team coming off a bye week is Coastal Carolina. Teagan, how are they looking? Did you hear anything about what they worked on? Any baptisms for them over their bye week, maybe?
You know, I don't think Tim Beck did anything like that. Maybe I could be wrong. But we'll have to see kind of how they look this weekend. Coastal getting ready to play ODU, of course, a team that they're very familiar with as they're now in Sunbelt play. ODU just beat Liberty over the weekend. That was their 100th program win because they just started playing football in 2009. So you know what? If I'm Coastal, I like that they won that game because they're not hungry for their 100th win anymore. You know, they hit that milestone. But I mean, they had some pretty good numbers against Liberty. They outgained them 483 to 210. They dominated the line of scrimmage. They kind of struggled on third down, which I think Coastal could really capitalize on. But it's also a struggle they're having. I think that Coastal is still a team where we have question marks still, which I really didn't want to have at this point in the season. But I still have them. I'm still not sure what to think of Tad Hudson, the QB, who started kind of as the third string quarterback, and then after Emmett Brown was injured and MJ Morris didn't do exactly what we were all hoping for, he's now the guy that we kind of have to depend on. So we'll have to see how Coastal does this weekend, and we're going to go to Caroline next.
Yeah, well, Coastal's playing off a bye. Clemson coming off a bye too. Tigers are back in action at North Carolina this coming Saturday. And that was interesting for a lot of reasons. This North Carolina team, as those of us who've been watching for the last couple weeks, has been struggling. We could maybe put Clemson in that same category as well, just the way that the Tigers' last couple of games have gone. But if you were to circle a couple winnable games on the schedule for the Tigers, you probably would have this North Carolina game circled on there, and you would also probably have their game the following Saturday at Boston College circled on there as well. All of those teams kind of toward the bottom tier of the ACC. That says it is Chapel Bill, so you never know. A little bit of a new look North Carolina squad out there that Coach Dabo Swinney and company will be heading into, but it's worth noting that North Carolina's offense is kind of one of the middle of the pack, maybe towards the bottom of the pack in FBS, but that Clemson defense, as we've seen, giving up about 365 yards a game. So that one should be a little bit interesting at noon on Saturday, but we will take a quick break for now. We will come back talking some pro football right after this. Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We talked about the college beats over the weekend, but we got to talk about those Panthers. Not exactly how they drew things up yesterday, getting a 30-point win over the Falcons week before this past week, and then going to New England yesterday and having almost the reverse, getting beat by 29 points. I mean, a couple interesting things from that game is just kind of a head scratcher if you really look at the stat sheet. I mean, the Panthers dominated the time of possession. They actually dominated the offensive yardage, but they end up getting beat by that many. But they got beat in special teams. Head coach Dave Canales saying that the team really got beat in all three phases. You know, obviously got beat defensively, giving up 42 points. They scored first, but it was a New England punt for a touchdown in the first quarter that really just kind of blew the field wide open. North Carolina native Drake May, New England's quarterback, had 3 touchdowns, so everything went right for New England, and it felt like just everything was kind of stagnant for the Panthers Here's head coach Dave Canales just talking about what kind of went wrong there and what the Panthers really need to do and evaluate right now.
I can honestly say that the effort and the energy from our guys is there. It keeps coming back to the execution. I have to look at that myself. Are we putting our guys in the best situation to be successful in every phase? I have to make sure that we have those conversations and that we keep progressing our football forward to find. I know who our guys are. I know they're not going to quit. I know they're going to continue to punch. They're going to continue to fight all the way through it, but it's not enough. We have to be able to come out and execute for 4 quarters to become the football team that I believe we can become. And the work starts right now. You know, it starts with me. It starts with our coaching staff. The players understand as well. This is not acceptable. And this is something that we have to come together and make sure that we're together on this thing so we're pushing forward.
Well, definitely some promising looks last week, some not so promising looks this week. Lots of things to figure out for Carolina. I guess the good news for Panthers fans is that the Dolphins are coming to town in a little less than a week this coming Sunday. They've been struggling a little bit too, so maybe that will be kind of a make or break game to see where we can get things for those Panthers. But they are sitting at 2-3 on the season right now and have what looks like a very long way to go. But stick with us. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Welcome back again to Palmetto Sports Daily. I know that usually Friday's the day to talk about high school football, but here we are going to talk about it today because Marion at Mullins was supposed to happen Friday night. It was supposed to be our game of the week. If you watched on Friday, you heard me hype it up, and then they had to cancel the game because of the inclement weather. So they're playing tonight. Marion looking to bounce back from an 0-5 start on the year. Mullins looking for their second win in a row from the Tobacco Bowl last year, Tobacco Bowl this year. That's tonight at 6:30. But for now, that's going to be it for Palmetto Sports Daily. See you all tomorrow.